we got this quarterback class that, quite frankly, is head over shoulders better than last year's quarterback class, but we still have some things to work out here. So we know that C.J. Stroud, Ohio State quarterback, is going to throw. We know that Bryce Young is not going to throw at the NFL Combine. What, if anything, do you think C.J. Stroud can do to perhaps differentiate himself from Bryce Young, who's not going to throw until he gets to his pro day at Alabama?
Well, I think if CJ Stroud does exactly what CJ Stroud has done throughout his career, and that is just wow people with his pure accuracy, then I think that he is going to force a little bit more of the conversation. And just kudos to CJ Stroud for electing to compete in this opportunity. Bryce Young, of course, gets a lot of credit for all the success that he had at Alabama, but at the same time, by choosing not to throw, that's significant in itself. But getting back to CJ Stroud, I think that he's a perfect start to this conversation because you're talking about the most accurate quarterback in this draft class. I personally like Bryce Young as far as who I project to be the most successful in the NFL. But at the same time, if you protect CJ Stroud, we've seen the unbelievable precision type accuracy, Aaron Rodgers like accuracy from CJ Stroud. That is just the single most difficult thing the quarterbacks are asked to do from the college level to the pro level is the simplest thing in terms of what you expect out of the position. You have to be accurate. And that's one thing that CJ Stroud has. That's why I'm really excited that he is taking advantage of this opportunity to compete. I think he's going to excel in this kind of combine setting.
I'm going to refer back to something you wrote about CJ in your top 10 for this NFL draft. I encourage everyone to go to Fox Sports and check out what Rob has had to say, but I highlighted this sentence in particular regarding CJ Stroud. He routinely delivers passes to all levels of the field with the precision of a jugs machine, sending rifle shots 20, 30 yards downfield just as the receiver makes his break and lofting pillow soft tosses down the seam over linebackers and under safeties. There it is, right? As you said, the comp being Aaron Rodgers, which I think is kind of interesting because no one teaches anybody to play quarterback the way Aaron Rodgers plays quarterback. And yet the ball goes exactly where it needs to every single time. Are you looking for mechanics? Are you looking for tells about his accuracy in CJ Stroud? And the reason I ask this is I also heard this about Baker Mayfield, and I'm a true huge Baker Mayfield fan. So can you talk me into why CJ Stroud might be a little bit better or even worse than, say, a Baker, or how much of a distance there is between him and, say, Aaron?
It's a great question. I think that you're talking about just pure accuracy with all three of these quarterbacks, that's what's justifying the comparison because you're talking about some very different type of players. For me, again, just where the ball winds up in terms of velocity, in terms of, again, the required touch at times, the level of difficulty in the types of throws that CJ Stroud made to me is very similar to what you see in a pro style offense. Obviously, what Aaron Rodgers has done speaks for itself. At the same time, neither of those quarterbacks, with a little bit more of a Baker being an exception, with Aaron Rodgers and with CJ Stroud, you don't see either of those quarterbacks usually take off and run with the football. And of course, there's so many quarterbacks in the NFL and the college level who are now doing that. And so to see a quarterback who is accurate enough that he doesn't have to do that, and then when he does choose to do it, the way that Aaron Rodgers can, certainly by time in the pocket, but is again not somebody you really have to worry about scrambling so much. With CJ Stroud demonstrating that willingness against Georgia, I think that's got scouts that much more fired up. So again, one of the reasons why I think the Stroud has a chance to build on the momentum that he created for himself with a spectacular performance in his final college game.
One of the drawbacks to a CJ Stroud is also one of the drawbacks to Bryce Young, which is to say you're working with some of the best talent in the sport that is college football. But one of the things that you don't have to say is that he doesn't fit what people think of as a prototypical NFL quarterback in height and weight. 6'3", about 213 pounds listed. We'll see what he weighs at the combine. But the guy that he's most compared to in this draft is Bryce Young, who is listed at 6 foot, 194 pounds. And I believe he would be the smallest from a weight standpoint guy to go in the first round at quarterback. Does that concern you at all, Rob?
Sure. I mean, because for the exact reason you just said, it's never been done before. And it's scary to be that bold. At the same time, it would be scary to be the person who passed up on a quarterback who was as good as Bryce Young has been throughout his entire time at Alabama. I mean, as I mentioned before, he is my personal top-rated quarterback in this draft. And if I was the NFL general manager, I had to go talk to the team owner and put Bryce Young's highlights up there, then I would feel more comfortable doing that than I would with any player in this draft.
Mm.
I think we're going to have the conversation, I think, a little bit later. It's certainly one of the conversations I want to have is about who is exactly the best defensive player in this draft class. Everybody talks about Jalen Carter and of course, Will Anderson Jr. At the same time, I think going back to Bryce Young, to me, and I use this expression all the time. I apologize. Maybe it's because I had a little bit too much this when I was a kid, but the proof is in the pudding. And with Bryce Young, I mean, the accuracy, the poise, the spatial awareness. Of course, I'm out here in Seattle, and so for a long, long time saw what Russell Wilson was able to do when he was having some fantastic years in Seattle. One of the things that really made him special, RJ, was just he had a different level of spatial awareness. He could feel people closing in. That's a really exceptionally rare type of quality for a quarterback, especially when he's smaller. And for Russell Wilson has that, and Bryce Young has that in absolute spades. He's remarkable in that way. And that's why, even with the acknowledgement of all that great talent that he's been around, and that's an excellent point, at the same time, I just see him making plays despite all the talent that's also coming up against him. I just think that the guy is a winner. I think that he's going to be very successful in the NFL. I would take him number one overall. And I think that there's going to be a lot of teams who are going to show a lot of interest should the Chicago Bears look to trade down, or perhaps if they go in a different direction and Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, for that matter, are on the board early on. I think there's going to be some action here in the top five of this draft. That's why I'm just so fired up to be talking about the 2023 NFL draft with you.
Man, look, I look at a Bryce Young, and I've been on that train since he came out of Mater Dei. I've also been a tremendous CJ Stroud fan from the moment that he got his offer at Ohio State. I'm really excited for both those guys to have an opportunity here, but I also want to Rob, I'm a short guy, all right? I don't weigh a lot, but I put up 315 on bench just the other day, okay? You're not going to call me slight. You're going to call me strong. I just don't think it matters that much, especially when you know that a guy like Stetson Bennett exists, 5'11", 190. Now, there's the world of difference, rounds of difference between those three guys, but if you're talking about winners, then when you're talking about winners and you're talking about Stetson Bennett, I have a hard time really giving that a lot of thought. Kyler Murray is another guy, 5'10", 207, right? I believe Russ is 5'10", 204, somewhere in there, right? Drew Brees is a little bit heavier, but also about 6 feet. I just don't think it matters. The guy can throw the football, move around, and you want to talk about escapability. I watched Bryce Young, who Houdini himself out of a Georgia defensive stranglehold more than a couple of times. I'm with you. If he goes number one, nobody's going to say boo. The same thing I think is true of CJ Stroud. But a little bit further down in this quarterback conversation, I thought it was interesting, right, that you got Young, Stroud, Richardson, Anthony Richardson, and Will Levis ranked 1 through 4. I can kind of see Anthony Richardson from a tools point, but I guess that's the same argument for Will Levis. So I'm going to start with Will Levis. Make me understand, man, what is it that I am missing? Because when I see him, I don't see the talent that everybody else swears they see. I could be an idiot. Let me know.
No, I don't think that you're an idiot. I think that at times, frankly, I think Will Levis hides his talents as well as just about any one of the top-rated prospects in this draft class, and that's why he is such a polarizing player, and that's why, as you mentioned, he's my number 4 rated quarterback in this draft class. He definitely has had as much buzz as just about anybody out there, but I personally have Anthony Richardson. In my opinion, his higher upside is the basic justification for why I have him over Levis. Going back to Will Levis, certainly some of the things that I love about him is the arm talent. I mean, just he has a absolute cannon for an arm. That he has the mobility that you're looking for. He has the ability to throw the ball with touch. He has the ability to throw the ball with anticipation. He's been playing for an offensive coordinator, as you likely know, that has NFL ties for the last couple of years in a row, different offensive coordinators. So I like the fact that he's had to take coaching. We had the conversation just a moment ago about Bryce Young at Alabama and all the talent around him. Certainly CJ Stroud at Ohio State, the same type of thing. Will Levis didn't have that type of talent around him. He did have a couple of NFL players on this team in 2021 and had a great deal of success. Lost those players, and almost predictably struggled a little bit as a senior. I would have liked to have seen him play in the bowl game. I would have liked to have seen him play in the Senior Bowl or some other type of all-star game setting. And I recognize that he's coming off of the injury. All those things concern me. That's why I think that Will Levis can be fascinating at this combine. He's going to have an opportunity because there's going to be scouts who are going to have the same exact questions on him. They're going to be a little bit more upfront with their concerns about him. And so he's got to justify and have some conversations. And so I really think that Will Levis is, in my opinion, one of the most fascinating players in this combine event. Because if he doesn't wow, to your point, RJ, if he doesn't wow in this type of setting, then I think the justification, all those worries are just going to escalate as the draft gets closer.
Well, it's a great point that you raise about the talent, right? Because he had a Wan'Dale Robinson in 2021 that felt like he was catching everything that was being thrown his way. And he also had a Chris Rodriguez. Right, yeah. Exactly, right? And I get it. And coming from Penn State, the argument was that perhaps both he and Sean Clifford didn't have the kind of consistency at coordinator that you would want to see, because to mention it, yes, he had an offensive coordinator that has NFL experience, but also left to go to the NFL, right? And is coming back he's coming back to Lexington this year. I'm also really interested in another guy in the SEC that is still rising up draft boards and even mentioned as being a number 1 overall pick in Anthony Richardson. And the way I want to preface this, Rob, is I spent a lot of time talking about how I thought Anthony Richardson was the closest thing to Cam Newton that Florida had since Cam Newton. Then they lose to Utah. They don't have the kind of season that they want to have. They get beat by Oregon State in their bowl game. But I still see the tools in the way that I guess people see the tools that Will Levis has. What do you think is the upside, like, for taking a guy like Anthony Richardson at number 1?
Well, again, to me, number 1 is a little bit rich. I mean, I recognize the talent. I think that he could be that, but I would have a hard time. Just again, I use the example I gave before about if I was a general manager talking to the owner of the franchise, my job is on the line. I recognize that I'm showing the highlights of the player. With Anthony Richardson in 1 year as a starter, that's going to be a pretty short highlight reel, even though he's an unbelievable talent. I mean, I think he's legitimately a first-round player. But again, I just would have a hard time at that spot. But once we start getting, it's top 5, top 10 conversation, then again, the upside is so immense. And if he gets drafted to a team, like, again, I'm in Seattle, if he just goes to the Seahawks and they presumably bring Geno Smith back and Anthony Richardson truly has a year to develop and just kind of, get mature a little bit, physically mature a little bit. I mean, you're talking about 21-year-old young man, 22, I believe, year old young man, but still the point being that this is a young man who grew up originally in Miami, then goes to Gainesville, signs with the Gators, plays entire high school and college ball in the same very close location. And now he's going to be drafted in the NFL. He's going to be expected to be a face of the franchise. So there's going to be an awful lot of eyes watching his workout. There's going to be an awful lot of NFL evaluators. And the men who are making the biggest decisions are going to be listening to those interviews. They're going to want to really get to know who he is as a young man. Can he be somebody that they can trust to be the quarterback? I mean, the most important person on your franchise, really, not only on the playing field, but obviously, as far as coaches and personnel and all that kind of stuff as well, too. So just a critical decision. I see the upside of Anthony Richardson. I also see all the concerns. To me, what you get excited about is the fact that just his physical stature. I mean, we want to talk about Will Levis gets the comparisons to Josh Allen all the time. And I agree with you. I like the Cam Newton comparison, but I think that there's some Josh Allen in Anthony Richardson as well. And that, again, just a massive man is willing to run the football with speed and power. Again, can throw the ball through the moon and back if he needs to. And then to me, one of the things that I'm most excited about, and one of the reasons I have him a little bit ahead of a quarterback like Will Levis, is I didn't see the progression from Will Levis in terms of his stepping up in the pocket, moving from his first to second reads, things of that nature. I have seen flashes of that of Anthony Richardson. It surprised me, to be honest with you. The more I watched, but the more I saw a quarterback who does have some of those that same spatial awareness that we mentioned about Bryce Young and with Russell Wilson. I see that with Anthony Richardson. You're talking about a player who only has one season as the starter and is even bigger, even faster, even stronger arm. My goodness, I think I just talked myself into drafting Anthony Richardson in the top 5. And that's exactly the kind of internal monologue that I think NFL teams are going to be dealing with for the next 2 months, which is why I think that Anthony Richardson does have a chance to move up that high in this draft.
I think you're onto something with a franchise that can afford to sit him down and have him just learn for a while. I think the best comp is we don't even need to know what jersey number you're going to wear because you're not going to play. And going through those interviews is going to demonstrate whether or not he has the capacity to sit that year and perhaps learn the position. I don't think there's any definitive proof one way or another that a guy starting right away or a guy sitting for a year is better or worse, but I would certainly feel better about a guy that gets to learn what the NFL is all about from a veteran. Patrick Mahomes, Alex Smith is the most famous example of this and how that worked out for Kansas City, still works out. The Josh Allen comp for both of these guys, Will Levis and Anthony Richardson, gives me pause for the same reason that the Jalen Hurts comparison gives me pause. I haven't seen too many guys fix their accuracy in the NFL. And those are two guys that fixed their accuracy in the NFL and became two of the better quarterbacks, better players in this sport. And I don't know that I want to bet on that with first round picks where I could use them for almost anything else. Thank you for watching the #1 college football show. Please remember to subscribe to the channel and like this video so that you don't miss any of the best college football coverage in America.